All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to our weekly tutorial sessions here on YouTube Live. I'm Chris, and I'll be the host for today. So let's go ahead and get started. So this week we asked for something a little bit different. We prompted you guys to send in your websites to have us do an evaluation of your site. So give feedback on some things that we see that you're doing right, and maybe provide some feedback on possible improvements as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started with today's session by looking at one of the submissions and giving some feedback based on that. So let me go ahead and pull up one of the ones that was sent in here. All right. This was sent in by Dave. So it looks like he's maybe a fairly recent user of DecoNetwork, and this is kind of what he has so far. I did look through your site, Dave, and I definitely see some really good things that you've done in terms of the navigation. You know, the structure that you've set up through the site. You've gone in and, like we recommend, you've gone in and clarified what your workflow is as far as how you want the customer to shop and do business with you. So you've eliminated, for example, the decorated products page, the designs page, and really what you're showcasing is the create page, the blank products page. So you're wanting the customer to browse through your selection of blank goods, and then load that into the designer and possibly make a purchase, or you also have this option to go in and, let's say, request a quote. So I really like how you've simplified that purchasing workflow. As far as kind of general design, um, this is maybe where you can come back and make some slight improvements. So I do like the large imagery that you've got going on the front page. I would recommend thinking about colors, how the images work with the colors that you've selected. So for example, here, at least on my size screen, your white title ends up going against the light backdrop in that image, so that's hard to read. So thinking about, definitely colors in your design, and maybe that means, bringing in some of your branding in along to the rest of the website. So your branding is kind of that lime green and dark gray colors. So pulling those colors in throughout the site might be a way to kind of add some of that additional contrast that's a bit missing at this time. And then as far as the rest of the homepage, I would say you can probably get rid of one of these product widgets. I'm not sure if that's either the categories or maybe the latest products. Um, reason being, you want the customer to kind of get to where you want them to go sooner rather than later. I think it's probably this bottom one that you can end up getting rid of. It adds additional, um, I guess you could call it scroll height. So it adds additional height to the page, and it doesn't necessarily get the customer to where you want them sooner, right? You already have the categories up here, which is probably how your customers want to get started. Going in, they already know what type of product they're after. So, maybe they want a shirt or maybe they're after a hat. So I think the category is probably a more successful widget to show on the homepage rather than individual products because, these 5 products, or let's say you have that cycling, let's say there's 10 there. The likelihood of the product that they're after being in this set of 10, may not be too high, again, depending on that customer, what they're after. But um, so I'd recommend maybe just getting rid of that. It looks like you are maybe looking at bringing in the Instagram widget down at the bottom. Maybe you just haven't connected it yet. So I think that would be a useful replacement for, instead of products, just have your Instagram to bring in some of that social connection. But besides that, you're doing some pretty good things, again, with the general structure. Um, besides that, just filling out the rest of your pages. So, I didn't take a full look at your account, so I'm not sure how recent you're with DecoNetwork, but definitely, there's a lot of content still to be filled in as far as your information pages and things like that. For the information pages, it can seem like it's something not as important, but um, the textual content that you include on your page is uh, in large part what the search engines are going to take a look at and use when considering whether your website is valid for a certain set of search terms. So having relevant information, let's say in your about page, or I would say even more so on your process pages, like your embroidery page and your screen printing page, having really relevant information about, what your process is and maybe how you differentiate yourself from the competition or what makes you special about your specific practice, so that someone searching for screen printing terms could potentially reach you based on that content. Okay, so that is one thing to I'll bring up is when you're setting up your site, there is a balance there that you need to uh, make sure to consider between textual content. So any information that you have as far as services that you offer. Right now, this homepage is very image heavy. Not a lot of text on the homepage, which that's another area where you might come back and think, could we give some paragraphs of text about again about the services that you offer? Uh, here on the homepage, talking about we offer screen printing, we offer embroidery, uh, we use these quality methods to produce all garments, things like that. So having that on the homepage again gives the possibility of your homepage more likely being returned for a set of results based on those keywords. Okay, so again, that's the balance that you want to make sure to consider, because from the from the search engine side, they're wanting to see that content that's there. From an end user perspective, um, you definitely want your consumer to be caught in terms of, visually, have visually inspiring images so that, they say, oh, this is a great looking site. Let me actually, go into the products and see what's available and things like that, and entice them to make a purchase with you. So there's that balance of visual appeal versus textual content. But, you know, implementing both in a way that makes sense is really what your goal should be. All right. So overall, I think you've got a really good start with the structure of the site. Come back and look at, I would say, colors. Again, like I mentioned at the top, implementing your branding colors throughout the rest of your pages, I think will be a nice touch. Bringing in some additional textual content. Uh, Getting rid of the latest products would probably be an overall benefit, and then bringing in some more of that social aspect with the Instagram. All right, but yeah, thanks for the submission, Dave, and hope. All right, sorry about that, guys. Had a bit of a technical issue there, but we're back. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into some questions that were submitted through the blog comments. Also, feel free to type in your any questions that you have through the live chat for this session as well. We'll go ahead and pick up from any live questions. But let's go ahead and get started with a question that we had from Kaylin, who was asking about colorways or color palettes for embroidery. So let's go ahead and take a look. We've covered in a previous session how to set up your color palettes for a specific process. Let's do a quick summary of what that looks like. So if I jump into my decoration processes section and click into, in this case, embroidery, and then click color palettes, this is the page where I can come in to manage which color palettes I'm making available. This is also where I can create a custom palette of my own chosen colors that I want to make available. All right, so by default, we're going to include a default Wilcom system color palette. If you want to, let's say, limit the amount of colors that you're offering, let's say, in your shop, you only keep stock of 20 colors, right? The standard palette has 56 colors, so more than you typically keep in stock or really use. So what you can do is you can come up here on the top right corner, choose Add Palette, and when you're adding a palette, you can add from some predefined selections that we've brought in from different manufacturers like Madeira and Ackerman and things like that. Or you can create your own palette. So you could start with an empty palette. And then the last option, you can copy an existing palette, which will allow you to use that existing palette as your starting point, and then either add or remove colors from that. So let's say we actually want to use Isocord 40 from Ackerman, and we'll call that embroidery colors. So we're going to use that Isocord 40 as our starting point. We're going to copy that palette. There's 210 colors in that color palette. So now based off of this, again, I carry 20 of those colors, so I can come in and start removing the ones that I don't offer. And in this way, you're going to be able to make your specific palette just of your shop colors. So you're going to go through and press delete on each of the colors that you don't want included. Once you're happy with your selection, you can press OK. And so you'll now have your specific color palette. The last thing you might want to do is remove the default one that came with the system. So you can go in and say delete on the default palette and then save that change. So what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that when someone's adding text or they've uploaded an image for digitizing, when the system's color matching to your palette, it's going to look at the palette that you've configured here. Okay, so that's as far as creating a color palette. You also mentioned colorways, which I'm not sure if you're referring to colorways embedded in the design, but let's assume that you are. So let's cover how that works as well. Let me pull up my site here, front end site, and we'll quickly jump into the designer using the embroidery process. Okay, so we're going to be looking here at my left chest area. I'm going to choose Add Design, Add Embroidery Design, and I'll choose Upload Image. I'll look at my desktop here, and let's pull in this bird's EMB file. Okay, so it's pulling in that EMB file. It's going to generate the embroidery preview. Okay, we'll accept to that copyright notice. And now that I've placed that image, you'll notice here on the top left corner, under image properties, I have this drop down where I can select from the different embedded colorways in that EMB file. So I've got the red bird variation and the black bird variation. So I can switch between those and you can see that preview updates live as I change those. So while we don't have the ability to change the colors of an already digitized artwork file, right? I can't go in and say, make this purple. You can predefine colors in an embroidery file, an EMB file, and then once you upload that into the designer, you can choose between those already defined colorways. Okay, so hopefully that kind of gives you a good summary, Kaylin, and gets you where you need to go. All right, let's keep looking at some questions here. I do see a comment from Dave. Dave, you can interact with the session. If you're viewing on YouTube, you should see an option for the live chat, or if you're viewing through the blog, you might want to refresh that blog page that you're on. You should see the comments now replaced with a live chat option, and that'll allow you to go in and interact throughout the session. Let's see, we had a question from Mark, who is mentioning that he actually manufactures apparel, so he does the cut and sew. And currently they've got everything set up as custom products. He's asking, what's the best way to have someone purchase that at one price and then have a surcharge for customization, such as a personalized name. Okay, so there's quite a few different ways you could handle that, and I may need clarity on what you mean by everything set up as a custom product. I'm not sure if you mean a custom blank product or a custom decorated product. I know in most cases where we have users setting up products that they manufacture, the common case is that you need to allow the consumer to change the colors of what we would consider the garment. So usually in those cases, people end up creating the garment as a decoration. So the garment is actually a graphic that's applied behind a backdrop of, let's say, either a blank product or just a blank box, a white box. So I'll need some clarity on exactly how you're using the system that way to give you a bit better feedback. Yeah, so I'll wait to see if you give some clarity through the live chat to take a look at that. Okay, we've got another question submitted through the blog here regarding Mailchimp. So will there be a separate Mailchimp application per store so that each store can have their information collected separately? Yeah, you do have that option. So if you're setting up the Mailchimp integration to sync your contacts and leads into the Mailchimp newsletter system, you can set that up at the store level. So when you're first setting that up globally, there's an option that will allow you to determine, do you want stores to be able to connect their own account? So you'll enable that. And what that's going to do is it's going to give each store the option to connect with their own account. So that's useful in cases where each of your stores is kind of a separate brand. That way you're kind of funneling those into the correct lists. Okay, so let's see. Through the live chat here, we've got Mark giving some clarification regarding his products that he's using. So he's saying he's using a custom decorated product. So just kind of how I envisioned he may have been doing it. Uh, the product is a design, and that design is then locked. Um, so he's now wanting to have people either buy it as is or add an additional name. So probably the way you'll end up setting that up, let me just get out of my designer here, jump into the backend admin section, is the use of custom fields. So custom fields is really the way you would add an additional surcharge onto a product purchase. Custom fields are set up, or rather, they're defined globally. And once defined globally, they can be assigned to individual blank items. And once they're assigned to a blank item, those options then flow to any decorated products that are built on top of those blanks. So, there are some considerations to think about there as you're setting these custom fields up and you're assigning them to your blank products. You need to make sure to understand that that option is going to show on all decorated products that are built on that blank. But as long as you're keeping that in mind, it shouldn't be an issue. You can see I've got some examples here of kind of what some fields might look like, right? So it could be a drop down, it could be a text field, or um, in the case of what you're after, where you're wanting the customer to have a surcharge based on whether they've set a name or not. In cases like those, I typically recommend a combination of two fields. One would be, let's say, a drop down, where you're asking the customer, um, do you want a personalized name? Yes or no? And that's the field where you'll actually collect the surcharge. So if I go in and say edit here on the drop down, um, right, so you'd have one option is yes. Let me just quickly edit this. And one option would be no. So the no option would have a price of 0, and the yes option would have your $10 surcharge. Right, so that would be one way to handle it is through the drop down. In a case like this, you want to make sure to enable that field to be a required field so that the consumer has to choose either yes or no to make sure that they're acknowledging, I've chosen either yes, I want a personalized name, or no, I don't. You want to make sure to have them send in that confirmation and acknowledgement. All right, so that's how you can collect the surcharge. You could then have a secondary field, which might be your text field, and that's where you actually collect the text information that they want to apply onto that personalized text line. So again, it could be a text field, and you can set the maximum number of characters. So if you do have a limit, let's say no more than 30 characters, you can set that under the maximum characters field. Length refers to the visual length of that field. So that one you don't necessarily have to worry about changing. You can leave it default, or if you want like a very short input field, you can reduce that size down. It's up to you. But the important one here is maximum number of characters. How many characters do you want to allow into that text field? All right, so let's say you've got those defined. You would then jump into the product section. You would manage your blank. And on the left-hand side tabs, you'll click into custom fields. And you will then be able to specify your custom fields and turn on the ones that you want assigned to this specific product. Okay, so hopefully that gives some possible option for you, Mark. Let's look at some follow-up questions from Dave. So you were asking about, through your website evaluation, we mentioned, changing the color scheme of your site. So all of that is possible through the website pages editor. So if you manage your site and you go into Edit Website, Website Pages, there's quite a bit you can do in terms of color. So the first place I would point you to is the Design section here on the left-hand side, and then the Style Editor. So the Style Editor, you can think of it as kind of your overall site theme. So that's going to include things like which fonts your site is using, what colors your site is using. So you can, change the color of your navigation background. You can change the color of your body text. So again, that's kind of global, general style. Besides that, you can also then go in and style individual elements. So if I, for example, had dropped in a button widget here into my header, uh, when I'm configuring that button widget, each widget has its own design tab. And so I could click into the design tab, and under design settings, now here I'm showing the button widget as an example, but like I said, every other widget has its own design tab and some options to customize and personalize that. So I could come in here and select my brand color. Maybe it's that lime green. I could change the text. So I can go in and say I want the text to be black against that green button. And then I might want to change the font weight to make it bold, to make it stand out a bit more, and increase the size of that text as well. All right, I could also maybe round off the corners if I want a rounded button. All right, so you can personalize your widgets through the settings and then usually the design tab. So that's for the individual widget. If you want to do it more on a global scale, it's under design and then you click into the style editor. Okay, so we also have another follow-up question about how to edit your commercial pages, like your return policy, your privacy policy, all that. Those are edited through your main settings page. So if you go back to your far left menu, you'll click into settings. And then from the settings submenu, you'll choose commercial terms. You'll see here we've got different sections like policy and agreements, declaration information, online designer help. So all of these sections have different pages that you can go in and edit. Let's say you want to edit your returns policy. You'll press edit next to that item. It's going to show you some default content, and by default, you won't be able to go in and start making changes. So to start making changes, you want to turn on the option up here, override default content. So you'll turn that on, and it's going to open up this editor for you to go in and start making changes. So I could come in here and make a change. All right, so again, it's settings, and then from settings, commercial terms. If you are on a multi-store plan, uh, keep in mind that since this is a global change, uh, it's going to show up across all of your web stores. So all of the web stores within one same system share the commercial term information. So they share returns policy, guarantee, privacy policy, so on and so forth. Now they are branded to each individual store using these placeholders like name, support email. So even though it's the same content, usually um, it'll be kind of rebranded to that site. So we'll populate in the site name and the site's email, but the rest of the actual text content will be shared across all of the stores. Mark, regarding your question on building the jersey, um, yeah, I mean, it's possible the way you're already doing that. The difference would be, you mentioned you're locking that design. The difference would be to not lock that design. Instead, when you're creating that decorated product, enable the option allow personalization against, let's say, the sleeve part of that jersey. So maybe you bring in the sleeve as a separate design object, and you select that design object. You go into the Advanced tab through that. Let me actually pull it up here. Uh, so let me jump into my site, go into Decorated Products. Okay, so it's in this step here. Let me just add a quick design here. See if I have something quick to choose. Go with that. Okay, so once you've dropped in that design, let's assume that's your sleeve. You're going to go into Advanced and you're going to turn on Allow Personalization. All right, what that's going to do is it's going to allow the colors in that design to be changed through the front end. So for the rest of the steps, um, I would say, you don't need to allow the user to customize. That would give probably more freedom that you want than you really want to give them. So set the customize option to don't allow users to customize. Um, we'll just allow it in the one color and let's save that change. Now, my example here is actually not the best because I did choose a raster image, which is not actually going to allow me to change the color. But in your case, you're using vector graphics, so the user will be able to go in and actually change the color of that design element. But let's view that product. So on the product page, you'll see there's no option to load this product into the designer so that you can start moving things around. But because I enabled allow personalization, I see the set image section. So that image can now be personalized. Uh, the options that are included with being able to personalize a design are being able to replace that image, being able to clear the image, so remove it, and being able to change the color. So if this was a vector graphic, I would see the color swatches right under that image, and I could click a color swatch and then choose something else from the color picker. Okay. Now, in your case, if you don't want these two options, that would be something that you could easily hide away with some custom CSS. So potentially you could leave, just the color swatches. All right. And as far as hiding these through CSS, we did cover kind of how to hide different elements through CSS in a previous session. Um, so look through that backlog of tutorial sessions and you'll find some useful information on that. All right, we've got a question in from Valerie who's asking how to add a single color of a product to a store. Um, okay, so let's take a look. I guess it depends on how you're setting up the store, Valerie. You're mentioning that your question is related to a blank product. My question would be, is this store an affiliate store, and is it focused on showcasing blank products with the option to customize? Or is this just your primary store and you're wanting to limit which colors you make available for your blanks? So I just need some clarification on that so I can understand what the use case exactly is. So I'll wait for your clarification on that. In the meantime, let me check back here on the blog to see if we have any additional comments. Okay, so we did get clarification from Valerie. This is for, she is asking this for an affiliate store, and that affiliate store is focused on blanks, so blanks with the option to customize. All right, so in that case, the way you're going to need to set up the products is you're actually going to need uh, to create copies of the blanks. So if you're making a specific blank product available, you're making that entire product available. And if you change, let's say, color availability, you're then changing the color availability for all stores where that same product is being used. So if you want, one store to have one product in one color, the easiest way to handle that is to create a copy of that blank. So let's say it's this Fruit of the Loom shirt that I'm trying to make that change to. I'll create a copy of it. So the system's going to duplicate that information. And once it's done, it'll take me to the configuration page. I can then go into the color section. Let's assume that the color is white. So I can come in here and uncheck every color other than white for this shirt. Okay. And then the last thing would be to set availability. So here at the bottom under availability, I can say this product is not in any store by default. And then down at the bottom, I would allow it only in that one store where I want to make it available. So let's say it's going to be my football booster store. So I can go in and say football booster, allow it there, but don't allow it in any other store by default. Okay, so let's save that change. Okay, so now if we take a look at my products list here, let me go to page 2 and let me just do a quick sort here, send that to the top. Okay, so now you can see here I've got 2 copies of that same blank. One copy has all of the colors available, and that copy is available in all of my stores. I've then got a second copy which only has white available, and that's only available in my football booster store. Um, so I guess the other kind of way to think about this is, we've made that one color option available in the store, but these other products are also available there. So what you would need to do is go into, the other products that you don't want available and set those to not be available in that one store as well. And you can do it individually like we did for that product. I don't have many products currently enabled, so I could do it individually. Um, Alternatively, you could use the product defaults or product groups function. So you might have your default group not available anywhere, and then just have individual groups uh, with the products specific to each store so that you can keep everything organized. Again, product groups is or product defaults is another one of those features that we've covered in a previous session. So do look back through that kind of backlog of tutorial sessions and look out for that one on product defaults or product groups, and has some really useful information on how to make the best of that functionality. All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and end the session here for today. We did get to all of the questions. Thanks again for joining in, guys. Um, Continue to submit your websites for evaluation. We won't have time to, obviously go through everybody's on any specific session, but we'll continue going through that list. So if we haven't gotten to you, feel free to kind of resubmit that for the next session. Quick update on the sessions. We are going to be switching away from a weekly session to every other week. So, next Wednesday on the 24th, we won't have a session, but we'll be back on the 31st for the next session. So do join in for that. And again, come with your questions. We'll open up the blog post ahead of time so guys can start either posting your websites for evaluation or submitting questions for us to answer as well. All right, thanks again, guys, for joining in, and we'll catch you on the next one.